Alright, y'all, welcome back to the channel and do some more buckshot testing. And today we've got a combo that one of you guys suggested that we test out here recently. We haven't tried it yet, and with this choke, we've tested it a couple times, but we haven't really seen what it can do when we find a shell that it really likes just yet. We've seen some decent performances out of it, and we know these shells are usually a pretty solid performer, so putting the two of them together should work out decently for us, especially with this shell and this choke constriction. So we'll see what happens and if it actually lives up to the potential that I think we might have here. But first, for the shells I've got today, I brought out some more of the Federal copper plated buckshot loads. These ones being the 12 gauge, 3-inch, 10 pellet load of triple aught buck at about 12.25 feet per second. The Federal copper plated line is probably one of the best, most consistent patterning buckshot loads on the store shelf. These usually do good in just about all the different shot sizes and through a good variety of different chokes as well, and constrictions for that matter too. Usually the copper plated lineup is a safe bet to get solid buckshot patterns. These 10 pellet triple aught loads have shown a couple good results so far in our testing with them, so we'll see how they perform through today's choke. And for those curious, yes, obviously these are copper plated and they are buffered, and they do have the shorter little Federal buckshot wad in them as well. So we know we should have a good shell. We'll see how it does through today's choke. As for the setup that we're running, I brought out the Remington 1187. It's got a 28-inch barrel on it, and for our choke, we've got the Carlson's Buckshot choke. This is a 700 constriction, which mathematically is a full choke for a 12 gauge, although most of the time 695 or thereabout is about the typical full choke constriction that you actually find in practice on most standard bore 12 gauges. And in Remington terms, 700 is modified to maybe improved modified constriction based on the typical flush factory choke constrictions. We haven't done a ton of testing with this Carlson's Buckshot choke, but it's been okay so far, but we haven't found that perfect load for it either. Maybe these triple aught 10 pellet loads might be that. With it being a 700 constriction, it's a little more open than a lot of full chokes are. That might give us that extra breathing room for the larger pellet and having 10 instead of 8 or so in a 2 3/4 shell. So we'll see what it can do. So as for our test today, we're running everything the same as we usually do. I've got the big sheet of paper set up at 40 yards with the chrono and templates so we can lay up over our pattern. So let's get you guys a view of that target, and we'll see what these Federal copper plated 10 pellet triple aught loads can actually do through the Carlson's Buckshot choke. Will it work out with it being a 700 constriction or not? In theory, it should be pretty decent, but let's take our shot and see how good of a pattern we can actually get. Okay, so quick look at our chrono before we look at our target. We have a boss claim of 1225 from those shells. We were a little bit over that with 1259 from that shot, but mid 1200s, perfectly fine and pretty typical for a load of triple aught like that. That's more than enough velocity to get the job done for sure. But how good of a pattern do we have out of that Carlson's Buckshot choke? Let's go check it out and see how it did. All right, so here we are down at our 40-yard paper, and we see a pretty solid pattern here. This is all 10 pellets on the target, and they're all pretty condensed down into a nice spread right there around our white dot, which was the point of aim. So glad to see that that combination hits exactly where we have our bead at. And like I just said, this is a perfectly nice, solid looking buckshot pattern. I don't know that it is the tightest that we've ever seen out of these shells, but this is still very much usable, no question about it. I did measure everything, both height and width. We're looking at 16.5 inches tall by 14 inches wide, and that is from the farthest two pellets from top to bottom down there, and from left to right as well. I always say anything sub 20 inches at 40 yards is a very nice buckshot pattern, and once you get below the 15-inch mark, then you're really starting to do something. I mean, we're right there at 16.5 by 14. So this is right down the middle of what I kind of like to see in a 40-yard buckshot pattern. Of course, it would be impressive if we could condense a couple of those little outside pellets in just a little bit, but still right around the 15-inch mark on average would certainly do the job for pretty much anything you'd ever want to use triple aught buck for. So nice looking pattern just on the blank sheet of paper. We may have a couple flyers like those two up there at the top right, but overall, nice performance. But let's throw a couple templates up. That'll give you guys a little better reference as to how it really performed in a few different real life scenarios. First up, we have our deer template. We have a front leg at the bottom and his neck just starts on the right side there. This is very close to average white-tailed deer body size in this cutout. So this is pretty accurate to what it would look like in real life. If we put the white dot where our point of aim was, since our pattern was centered up, that gave us 9 of the 10 pellets that would have hit the deer. The only one we're missing is the little bit higher one. It's right behind the template up there at the very top, but everything else is pretty much right through your vital area. I don't think a deer is going to go very far, if anywhere at all, with that kind of spread. This is a triple aught buck load at over 1200 feet per second. It's definitely going to get the job done for sure. So I definitely would not hesitate to run that out to 40 yards or so on a deer hunt. And you could probably push that a little bit farther as well, since these are a triple aught and you do have a decent little tight spot right around that core. If you found yourself in a situation where you may need to take a little longer shot or may have misjudged your range a little bit, I think this could still afford you a little bit extra than 40. So deer hunting capable? Yep, absolutely so. Next up, we have our coyote template. Same story here. Pretty close to average life-size body on what a coyote would be in real life. And obviously, I don't think a ton of people are going and picking up a Carlson's buckshot choke with a load of federal copper-plated triple-aught buck for coyote or predator hunting purposes. But if you have that combo loaded up in kind of your farmhouse or backyard gun for getting critters out of the yard, or if you're deer hunting and have a coyote come through and have a shot at it, this is the kind of pattern you're looking at, and it would certainly not be a very nice time for a coyote. 40 yards, you're still hitting them with most of your pellets, and a triple aught at over 1200 is going to make for a very bad time for a coyote. So still, even if it isn't a dedicated predator combination, if you had the opportunity at one, you obviously have plenty good enough of a pattern to do the job for sure. And finally, for the guys that may not be hunters and may not have a good reference as to how big different body sizes of animals actually are, you may be more of a tactical oriented type of person. Here we have a torso cutout. This is a regulation 18 by 30 size cutout. And obviously, we're not saying that this is a home defense scenario shot that you should be taking or something like that all the way out here at 40 yards. But this will give those guys that may not be hunters a little better reference as to how the pattern performed. And still, we've got 9 of the 10 pellets within this torso cutout at 40 yards. The only one we're missing is just above the shoulder, right up there behind the template. Everything else is right there through center mass. So still, if for whatever reason you had to use that combo at 40 yards for a two-legged creature, it would certainly work. But now those guys have a little better reference than an animal as well. So still, very nice performance overall. That would be a pretty versatile combo you could use for a wide variety of different things, and it would certainly do the job. And I'm saying anywhere 50 yards and in, it's probably going to do the job as well. So perfectly solid performance for this combination overall. And I think it worked out pretty decently putting those copper-plated triple-aught buck loads through that Carlson's 700 buckshot choke. And here's the wad out of that shell. Typical federal equipment when it comes to their buckshot loads that aren't loaded with flight control wads. Looks very much how I would expect it to. You can see a little bit of that buffer material sitting down in there. And it does look like it snagged just a little bit on the tips of these pedals. But that choke does have porting. And when we run these wads through ported chokes, that typically does happen with how thin these pedals are. So absolutely nothing that I wouldn't expect to see here. And it clearly did the job just fine for us today. All right, well, what do we think about that performance right there? I think we covered it. It's a perfectly adequate, solid performing combination. Anything under 20 inches at 40 yards is a nice performing buckshot combination. But once you start hitting about the 15-inch range or below, that's where things really start getting nice. I mean, we're right there at it. 14 by 16 and a half. That's going to do the job for just about whatever you'd want to use it for. You could probably squeeze a little bit farther range out of that if you had to or needed to or misjudged your range a little bit or something, but anything you'd want to use it for, especially 40 yards and in, is not going to have a very nice day, that's for sure. So I definitely wouldn't hesitate to deer hunt with it or something like that. You could load that up in bear country, and although buckshot probably would not be my first choice, a combo like this would definitely make for a deterrent in a campsite area or something like that, that's for sure. So just a solid performance overall. Maybe we can squeeze those couple little stragglers up top down just a little bit. Maybe we we can tighten it up an inch or two more than what we saw here. But overall, I don't think we can complain too much about a 15 or so inch on average type of pattern like we saw here. But let me know all your thoughts down below. Is this about what you expected to see? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any of those copper plated triple aught loads or one of those Carlson's buckshot chokes? And if so, what kind of results have you seen? Is this a combo you would actually run for anything? Hunting purposes, defensive purposes, property gun, campsite defense, whatever the case is, as well as what other combos do you want to see us run those shells through, what other chokes you want to see them through, or what other shells do you want to see us run through that Carlson's 700 buckshot choke. Let me know all that down below. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.